Hello everyone, today I'm going to be reviewing this headphone right here. This is the Technica M50x. I just want to say real quick, I'm sorry about my voice, I'm a little sick today. So I've been really excited to review this headphone because this is probably my favorite headphone of all time, period. It just has a perfect balance of everything for me. So let's get to it. So in terms of build quality, this headphone excels. This is probably one of my, if not my favorite thing about it. You can see the hinges right here. Although they're made of plastic, they're really rugged. You get to close the headphone like this and it becomes really portable as opposed to something like the cheaper M40x, 30x, and 20x, and something like the DT990s and the DT770s and all AKG options with almost no exceptions. So this makes it really portable and nice to take outside. It's also not as bulky as you would imagine. This thing is really rugged, but the thing is, it's also not very heavy. And I like that about it because you would imagine that if something is built to be really powerful and really heavy, it's going to be really bulky, but it's not. Now, when it comes to comfort on this headphone, I am a little conflicted because on one hand, while the ear pads are actually quite fairly plush and very nice, and the headband is too, the thing is, the ear pads, at least for me, are just not big enough. My ears almost always touch the drivers, and when they're not, the clamping force is a little too much for me. So while I really like this headphone, when it comes to long sessions of recording, I sometimes decide to take these off and put something like the DT990s or some IEMs on, just because this gets a little much. But of course, this is a monitoring headphone, and most monitoring headphones are kind of like this, like the Shure SRH440A, for example, or something like the HD280 from Sennheiser, which is great for monitoring, but the clamping force is really high on it. When it comes to the sound quality, the tone of this headphone is just perfect to me. It's got plenty of bass, but not too much where it gets muddy and where you lose your voice in the amount of bass there is. It has a small tiny cut in the sub bass and a good amount of bass in the upper bass, where your voice is probably going to be sitting. The mids on it are quite fair. They're not too much, they're not too low. They're a perfect balance for me. And the treble on it, while a tiny bit harsh, is perfectly fine. It's not too much for me and it doesn't come off as metallic as something like the DT770s and 990s. Keep in mind that if you're buying these solely for the reason of music enjoyment or media enjoyment, then you might be better off with something like the DT990s or the 770s, basically because they're a bit more comfortable and because in the end these have a smaller soundstage because they're closed back headphones. Now, if you've watched any other review of this headphone, you can tell that it has a locking mechanism that prevents it from yanking out the cable whenever you take it out. And I kind of like that. I think that's a nice mechanism. It doesn't benefit me per se, but it's nice. When you buy this headphone brand new, you get about 3 cables in the box, 1 long cable, 1 short cable, and 1 coiled cable. And I think that's a perfect balance. I only have the coiled cable with me, and even though I'm not a big fan of coiled cables in general, this one is fine. It's not too bad. It gives a good length between the two sides of it, and it's good. Another thing that I like about this headphone is just the design. I mean, I can imagine myself wearing these outside, and I've worn these outside multiple times. They just fit. They don't look like studio headphones. They don't look like anything extra. They sit very close to your head, which makes them not really bulge out like gaming headphones or something like the Bear Dynamics. Now, these will have a bit less analytical power compared to something like the 990 or the 770, so if you're doing mixing, while these are fine, you have to learn what the kind of headphones they are. You have to understand where the bass sits, you have to understand how much treble is too much and how analytical these can be versus other options. This doesn't go just for this headphone, this goes for any kind of headphones you buy. So how do these fare in the Technica or the studio headphone lineup in terms of price to performance? I can happily say that this headphone is worth its price. It's gonna live for a very long time. You're probably not gonna need to change the pads for a while unless you use them in the summer because these are genuine leathers and that's a very lovely thing. Some people prefer the M40x to the M50x, but I've heard that the bass on those is a little bloated. If you're looking for something that is really budget, I've reviewed the M20x and I would recommend it easily to anyone. But you gotta be careful because the M20x is built like rubbish compared to something like this. Is there any cons about using this headphone? Well, for me, the only biggest con about this is not being able to wear it for too long because of the clamping force that I personally find to be a little much. But otherwise, there is almost nothing that I don't like about this headphone. Keep in mind that sometimes you can replace the pads for something a bit more comfortable if you don't care about the sound being too accurate. At some point, I had some third-party ones equipped on here, and they were a lot more comfortable than this. They made the sound a bit more bloated, but they were really comfortable. So would I recommend the M50X? Yes, I would. I definitely would recommend these headphones for most kinds of people, whether it be for gaming, for studio use, or even walking with them outside. I can't find many reasons to fault this headphone. It's just really nice. Also, we're coming on to the Black Friday days where this headphone has been listed before for about 105 to 110 bucks instead of 150. So if you manage to get it for that price, I congratulate you. You got a steal. Anyway, that's all for this video. I hope that you have a very, very nice day. Goodbye.